So today we start learning about Photoshop and getting to know your work area within Photoshop. So this is the home screen. So if you open up Photoshop, you should have either 22, 2022, 23, depending on when you're watching this, it might be different. So this is the home screen. As soon as you open Photoshop, you will see something similar to this. And in the left-hand side, you have a few buttons. The ones that we use are mostly file and open, but I do want to talk about this learn option, which is really cool. If you've never really used Photoshop, these are some tutorials that are fairly short that will explain the basics so that you have a better understanding before you start doing assignments and projects. So we're going to go back to our home page. This is where you see all of your recent projects. So anything that you work on that you save, you'll see them all here for easy and quick access. And the new file will create a completely new blank document, and you can tell it what size you want it, the format, all of that. And today we're going to be opening a file. So we're going to switch to Google Classroom. And you should see a chapter 1 birthday card assignment like this. Uh, Maybe a little more files than this. You're going to look for the 01start.psd file, and you're going to click on that. And in the top right, you're going to see 3 dots. That's for more actions, so you're going to click on that. And we're going to open a new window. This allows you to open up the file with the download option, which we did not have before. So you have to open it in a new tab in order to get this. So now we're going to download. And depending on whether you're on Chromebook, or I mean Chromebook, Google Chrome or Safari, you might see something different. So here is our downloads. If we click on this folder, it's going to show in Finder, and that shows us where our download went. So I am on a Mac. So 01 start is in the downloads folder. I can double click this and it'll automatically open it in Photoshop, or I do want to go back to Photoshop so I can show you the other route. We're going to click open, and we know it's in the downloads folder, so these are all of our folders. So go to downloads. Here's the start file for chapter 1. Click open. And this is the file that you will be working on. First thing we're going to do is we're going to save this so that we can name it and place it in the correct folder. Now, if you don't already have a folder, I'm going to minimize this. We're going to right click, create a new folder, and label it digital media. We're going to go back to this. And we're going to save this. So file, save as. And before we do anything, we're going to go switch to our desktop and look for that digital media folder you just created, which mine is right here. You can also make it right through this area, so you can create new folder in your desktop and you can label it digital media, so you don't necessarily have to create it beforehand. You can create a new folder while you're here. So I'm selecting my digital media. Within the digital media folder, we're going to create a new folder because we like to stay organized. And we're going to label it lessons. Create. So these are the lessons. This is where we're going to save all of our chapter lesson tutorials or files. So make sure that that is selected. And then now we are going to rename our file. So this up here, which says save as, this is where you get to name it. Now, if you don't see this, it might be, I don't think I can minimize it. Oh, I can. So some of you might see it this way. If you click on this gray arrow, it opens it up. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. But that's this arrow right here. So again, we are in the digital media folder. Inside, we made a lessons folder, so by creating new folder. And now we're going to title this. So I'm going to highlight it. And you're going to put your initials, so IT are my initials, underscore, which is shift minus, and then you're going to put chapter 1, so CH1. You don't have to spell out chapter, I'm just doing CH1 underscore B day card. Notice how I did not use any spaces. We do not want to use spaces whenever we're naming a file. When you name a folder, that is completely fine, but a file, we use underscores and capitalization to separate letters and words. Then the format, we need to make sure it is on the Photoshop format. Then you're going to click Save. Now this pop-up you might get, we're just going to click OK. If you don't want this to keep popping up every time you're trying to save a Photoshop document, you can click on Don't Show Again and it won't pop up again. So we're going to click OK. And now we have this file saved. So if I go to my Finder window and switch to desktop, and I'm going to go look for my digital media, lessons, here is my save file. If I made any mistakes in naming it, I can always right click and rename. I can also change the view at the top. I like keeping it in the columns view because I get to see little thumbnails of what I have. Now that we have the file ready, so we're going to talk a little bit about your workspace in Photoshop. On the left-hand side, you have your tools. So this is a toolbar at the very left. On the top, you have your menu, which will change depending on what tool you have selected. So if I click on this, you have one menu. Click on this, it changes the top. And if you notice these two small arrows right here, if I click on that, it will expand it and I can collapse it. This all depends on the size of your screen. Like if you're working on a laptop, you might not have that much screen space, so that's what this is for. We keep it like this just because we're on an iMac, but it should keep all of the same tools. And then if we look down here, we can see our document information. So if I were to zoom in all the way, see how it changed to 200% down here? If I zoom out more, it'll tell me I am at 66.67%. That's how zoomed out I am. Then down here, if I click on the arrow, I can change it and see what my document size is at. What type of profile, so I'm in an RGB profile. We like to keep it in document dimensions because it tells me it's a 4:9 by 6:8 or 6.86 inches. But there's a lot of different settings, so we're just going to keep it on document dimensions. Then you have your little slide bar, so you can move around your space. I have a trackpad, so that's how I'm able to do this. And if we want to switch to 100% view, so right now I'm not at 100, I can go up here. So we're going to go ahead and click on view and go ahead and do 100%. That way you see it up close, nothing's getting cut off. Now, if you've noticed, I was zooming in and out without clicking the zoom button. So the zoom button, the tool, so here's my zoom tool. Down here, there's a magnifying glass. I can click on that and I can click and drag in or click and drag out to zoom in and out. I prefer to use shortcuts, and the shortcut to zoom in and out is fairly simple on a Mac. It is Command minus to zoom out, Command plus to zoom in. So if you can remember that, it's going to save you a lot of time. So Command plus, Command minus. All right, let's switch back to 100% view, which I am at. On the bottom right hand side, you should have your layers. For this file, we only have 2 layers. As you progress through the lessons, you'll notice that the layers will also progress, so you'll have more layers to work with. Right now, we only have 2 layers. If for any reason you cannot see your layer panel down here, we're going to go up to Window, and the second option where it says Workspace, make sure that you are in the default Essentials, so right here. Now, you might already be in this workspace, but it's still not showing your layers, so we can reset. So if we click on Reset Essentials, it will reset it back to its original layout. Okay, now we're ready to make our first edit to this photo. So we're going to open up the Adjustments panel, which is right above the Layers panel. So here's the Adjustments. Click on that. And we're going to choose Brightness and Contrast. And we're going to make the rows a little bit brighter and have slightly more contrast. So we can either move this back and forth, but we have specific numbers we were given by our textbook. So we're going to type in 98 for brightness and 18 for contrast. So we can already notice a big difference. And you'll see at the bottom that it created a separate layer for the adjustment. The nice thing about this type of adjustment, this is called a non-destructive because it's not doing anything to the rows layer. We can turn this non-destructive layer on and off, so you can see the difference. Now we're going to move this down 1 layer because we want the ribbons to be at the top. So if you click and drag this down, your brightness and contrast adjustment should be right above the rows. And the reason is whatever is underneath that adjustment layer is what's going to be affected by that brightness and contrast adjustment that we just made. So if this was on the very top, the ribbon color would also be affected, and we don't want that. So that is why we're moving it down 1. Now the next thing is we're going to turn on the ribbon layer. So by clicking on the eyeball, you can turn it on and off. And then we are going to go to our rectangle marquee tool. Or actually, before we do this, let's select the eyedropper tool. So get this ready for the next part. So here's my eyedropper tool. Click on it. And it's pretty nice because you can actually play this and it'll tell you, whoops, you can play that and it'll tell you what it does. We are just going to click on the blue ribbon. Now, nothing's happening. Well, if you look at the right side, I have the brightness and contrast layer selected. So I'm trying to get this blue, but it's not working because I don't have the ribbon layer selected, which is where that blue is. So I'm going to click on the ribbon layer. Now click on it, and now you can see I can select the different shades of blue. Depending on where your eyedropper is, since this is different variations of blue, you can pick one that you like. So get that ready. And then the next step is we're gonna go and switch the units of our document. So some of you might have it set to pixels, and some of you might have it on something else. So to change the units, units meaning like if I want it in inches, pixels, centimeters, we want to set it to inches. So we're going to go to the Photoshop tab right here. So Photoshop, settings, let's look for units and rulers, and make sure that your rulers are set to inches, not pixels. By default, Photoshop likes to be set up in pixels, but we're going to switch it to inches and then click OK. And the reason we did this is because when we draw a rectangle with using this marquee tool, you're going to need to draw it in a specific size, and the size is in inches. So that is why. If not, you would have been completely lost. So now we're going to switch to this rectangular marquee tool. And our book says we need to put a banner at zero point 0.7 in height and 2.5 inches wide. So before we draw the banner, we need to make sure we have the ribbon layer selected, not the rows. And you will see why if you end up clicking the rows. So we're gonna click and drag to create a or rectangle. So click. We're gonna put this somewhere at the bottom. So click and drag. So if you notice, you see the numbers W and H, that's width and height. So width was going to be 2.5. So we're going to go to 2.5. It's okay if you go, actually it's stopping at 2.3. Okay, let's try it again. We're going to edit, deselect, file, deselect. Where's the deselect button? Oh, it's under select. Select, deselect. That will deselect this little selection tool. Or you can just do Command D to deselect. So make that go away. Okay, let's try again. So 2.5 wide. Whoop, that's too much. 2.5. That's close enough. And then 0.7 in height. So 0.75 in height. So that's pretty close. So I'm going to leave it. Whoops. Again, Command D. 0.75. 2.5. This is kind of difficult on a trackpad, so sorry about that. Okay, that's close enough. And we're going to move this to the corner somewhere about here. So once you let go, because you're clicking and dragging to draw your rectangle, once you let go, you can actually move this around. So we're going to move it to the corner right here, or the edge. And then we're going to switch to our brush tool, which is this one. Now, if you're not seeing the brush tool and you were in the pencil tool for any reason, you can just right click, switch to brush tool. Anytime you see these little dots at the bottom of the tools, that means that there are more tools hidden behind that tool. So we're switching to brush. Now in our options bar, we're going to open up this right here, your options for your brush. We need to select a soft round brush and give it a size of, let's see, what does this say? 65 pixels. So, whoops, 65. And a hardness of 0. So that is my brush options. You can also right click and it'll pop up. So there's more than one way to get to where you need to be for the settings. And then once you have that, all you have to do is fill in that rectangle. And notice I'm going outside of the rectangle, but because I have the selection um, the rectangle selection here, that's keeping my brush inside those bounds. So I can just fill it in. Then Command D to deselect. We got a rectangle. And the next part, we are going to make this cutout, like this little angled cutout. We want to make that same cut down here so that it matches. So we're going to zoom into that bottom rectangle that we just filled in. So Command plus is the shortcut. Now, if you don't want to, if you want another shortcut to move around your work area, instead of using this scroll, like let's say I zoom in even more, so Command plus again. If you hold down your space bar, you see that little hand right there? So that's actually this tool, which is the hand tool. So if I hold down spacebar and click and drag with my mouse, it allows me to move around the area, which is very convenient. So we are going to move right here, our bottom banner, and we're going to switch to our polygon tool. So this is the lasso tool. We're going to right click, switch to polygon lasso tool. And that lets us do pretty much the same thing we did with the rectangular marquee where it creates a selection. Except with the polygon, we get to draw our own selection. So you can see there in that little clip. So we're doing, again, polygon lasso tool is what we're doing. And what we're going to do is, again, make sure you have the ribbon selected because that's what we're working on. You're going to click the top. And then you just need to click once and it has a line right here. Then go down at the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can be out here if I wanted to. Doesn't matter. Then click bottom. Then we're going to click somewhere in the middle, like right here. Click once. And then we're going to close this. Now notice it has that little circle. That means we're closing it. If you're over here, that's not closing the shape. So click. We have that selection that we just drew, and you're just going to click delete. Now, if you accidentally drew, which has happened, so don't worry, but if you accidentally drew the ribbon on top of the rows instead of the ribbon layer, when you click delete, it's going to delete the ribbon and the rows. This is why layers are very, very important because I just deleted this, but the rows is still there. That is because I'm only deleting from the ribbon layer. So if that happened, that's okay. Just undo. It's not that difficult to redo a rectangle and fill it in. Just undo and go back and redo the ribbon on the ribbon layer. And the way you go back is you can either go to window and pop up your history and it tells you the history of everything you've done. So if I knew, oh, I messed up when I clicked on the rectangular marquee tool, I can go here and go back. But I don't want that, so I'm going to go forward. So that is the nice thing about this history right here. Or you can just do the Command Z shortcut and that'll undo. Alright, so Command D to deselect. That makes the selection go away. And now we are going to type our name at the bottom. Before we do that, well, let's select the type tool right here. Make sure it's the horizontal type tool because we are going to type in horizontally. Then on the top right, you're going to go to swatches because we want to get the same yellow that's right here. So we're going to go to swatches and then open up the pastel. And there should be a yellow. Let's switch. Let's click on this right here. Let's do a small list. There you go. So look for pastel yellow. Click on that. that selects the yellow. So you can see here it is yellow, and you can see down here on our colors that it is yellow. So we're going to go back down, and we're going to set the type to 32 points. There's 30, we can actually type in the 32. And the font, I will let you pick what font you would like. I'm going to use what the book used, which is the Myriad. I think it's one of these. Myriad Pro, I believe. Oh, it changed my points. Okay, let's go back. 32. Okay, so selected that. So I have my font, the font size, and the color set up. Now this tells you what alignment you want. I'm just going to leave it at the center. And then we're going to click and drag our text right here. Now this is like a kind of like a dummy text. It will automatically fill in with a Latin phrase or like word. It's just like a bunch of um, wording to show you like a sample text of like the font and the size so that you can adjust it. So if I say, oh, I want to change it, I can change my font and I have a sample right here so I can see what it looks like. So it is already highlighted, so I can just delete it and I can type in my name. Now it is way too big and it cut off. Whenever it does that, I can make this wider to make it fit. So I can, if I make it too short, it's going to cut it off. So widen this. Or you can just highlight. If you double click all of this, you can just adjust the size and make it smaller like that. Another shortcut, if you're double clicking and it's not highlighting, you notice here that you now have a text layer. So if you double click on the T, the little icon, the thumbnail, so T, double click on it, will select all of the text. So again, multiple ways to do the same thing, which is nice. And now we're going to switch to our move tool right here so that we can move the text layer and center it better. So right there. Now if you change your mind and you're like, I don't care for this font, again, double click the T. You can always change your font. Now we zoom out and the birthday card is done. So save this, file, save. And I will upload a separate video to show you how to export so that you can refer to that video for any project so that you know how to export your project as a JPEG because we are going to be turning in JPEGs.